Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Odyssey House Journals. I'm Randall Carlisle, your host, and Nicole Slack is my co-host. Love the way you curled your hair today.
I know.
But
I was just up really early. That's what it was.
And our guest is Tiffany. Welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you.
And let me share an analytic that we just came across, that the number one country, you can think about this, outside the United States that has an interest in this podcast would be
Kazakhstan, New Zealand.
Germany.
Well, yeah.
Why? I don't know.
I don't know if Kazakhstan's a country.
No, anyway, it's fun to watch, because of today. Yeah. And we have viewers and listeners even in places like Russia and the Ukraine. Even while they're fighting their war, somebody takes the time to tune into a podcast. So thank you guys all for doing that. And we're sorry the situation you're in over there. And hopefully, we're recording this in June of 2025. Hopefully, when somebody watches it a few years from now, they'll say, oh, I remember reading about that war and the war's over. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Fingers crossed.
One of the things that bugged me when I went through treatment for my alcoholism was the therapist saying relapse is part of recovery. Because I said, okay, I'm going to do it this time. I'm going to stop drinking. And then why are you telling me that it sounds like you're saying it's okay to relapse? Did that ever bother you or not?
I don't think it bothers me. I took it in as information of like, okay, it could happen and it'll be okay.
Okay. Well,
I always I guess addicts understand the why, right? Why did you do that? Why didn't you do that? Why do you keep? Why won't you?
Yeah.
Every relapse has taught me a lesson of why I want to be in recovery, why my true inner self is.
That's why I really wanted to have you as a guest, because I didn't know your past, that you had gone through the whole program and you were actually working with inmates at the Salt Lake County Jail.
Yeah.
From Odyssey, as an Odyssey staffer.
Yeah. Odyssey graduate, 13 years of recovery. And then April of 2023 started opioid addiction, which was new to me. And I found myself homeless, during winter, this last winter, dirty, without my children, I remember thinking, if I'm not a wife or a mom or a strong, educated woman in recovery, then what was all that 13 years for?
And so you had 13 years of sobriety.
Yeah, pretty. I worked for CATS for 3 years. Odyssey graduate. I graduated with the panel, and I was in Odyssey 2008 to 2010. And so that's when it was old Odyssey, when they had marathons, and it was a lot more hardcore. And then I started Medina Place for First Step House, which was the first supportive housing project that they had in Utah, and have a relationship with Mayor Jenny Wilson based off of opioid reversal that she saw me do on State Street. She was the woman calling the police. She was on her way home from work and saw it. So nominated for victims advocate seat in criminal justice city council, which I still have. But yeah, and it.
So life's going great. Everything's wonderful.
Yeah.
And was Jenny there? Did she administer naloxone?
No, I'm the one who, I was driving by and saw this man overdosed on the street, and his friends were surrounding him, and I just knew based off where it was, what was going on, and so I pulled over and jumped out and administered the opioid reversal. So it kind of opened up for her the importance of Narcan and having Narcan and using
I think
Narcan.
I remember that as a news story.
It actually was, 2020,
Yeah.
So, and then, it took me a long time to figure out being mad at God and wondering how I got in this situation, even though I knew the whole time. And I would tell clients that I had it, if it's not a problem, it's not a problem. This doesn't necessarily have to be an abstinence-based thing, meaning if you can handle everything in life that you need to handle and avoid consequences and still use, then what's the problem? Why would you stop? And I think that's just to say out loud that I think that we all have a love for our addiction and our drug of choice. Otherwise, why would we keep doing it, based off some of the consequences that we have out there. So,
and of course, the if you threw out in that, because it makes it sound like you're advocating somebody being in addiction.
Absolutely.
But almost with everybody, at some point it comes crashing down.
Yeah. Well, and how can I explain to my children that I wasn't there for, or to people that I cared about, or my record in the criminal justice system that I have myself? Why? If you're not an addict, you don't understand why. And it was freeing for me to say I loved my drug of choice more than anything else in this world. It was my number one relationship at many times in my life.
So let's go back before we get into your relapse. What was your life like, and what drug were you addicted to?
So before recovery, I was kind of a North Temple crack cocaine user, and have graduated felony drug court twice. Was in Odyssey house, a lot of interventions, and then my son was born. And people say sometimes something just clicks in your life, and it's what it seemed like it was. It was like the insatiable throbbing in my soul for my drug of choice was no longer there. And because of my criminal record and my past, it was hard for me to find work. And so I found passion to help or not even help. I don't believe you can help like a grown-ass man or woman do anything. But I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to support someone who had been through some of the same things that I had. And I loved my drug of choice, especially then. And, to speak frankly, I just didn't give a about life. Once I got into recovery, I began to care. Sometimes I think that's the difference. You begin to, so.
We have to bleep that out because we're on an AM radio station as well. So Matt will have to.
Sorry.
He'll have to edit that. So if we could avoid that.
Yeah.
Not that Nicole and I are offended, but
okay, yeah.
But it could challenge.
Those would be the only times I use that word.
Library. Thank you. So you were into crack cocaine on North Temple, and for people watching around the world, that still is one of the hot spots for drug dealing, homelessness, prostitution, crime. You'd think that because everybody knows it is, that there'd be some way to stop it, but so far they haven't.
Yeah.
So you find recovery, and when you say in 2008, Odyssey was a different program, you're not kidding.
Not at all.
And so you were in for like 2 years?
15 months.
See, and now the average is what, 3 to 6 months?
Yes.
So
I got remanded out. I was probably one of the first remands as house supervisor. They said I was a master manipulator, and they had to sacrifice one to save the many. And I remember saying, I'll be back. And so throughout my education in social work, my associates, I did my internships with Odyssey. And that was kind of a way to prove myself again, And then got hired on with the parents program, and a couple months later interviewed for the CATS program. And
wow.
Yeah.
So okay, we're talking success, a comeback, and everything else. So what happened that you're back in the program?
So, like I said, I started an opioid addiction. Sometimes I think I'm a very God-fearing woman, and so I think that things happen because they're supposed to, and to strengthen and teach and put you in a different path. One thing I didn't do in recovery was share rooms with other recovering addicts. It was like, I run groups. I'm not gonna sit in here with people that might be my clients or have been my clients and share my story, you know. And I had a bias against opioid addiction because that was part of my childhood. And so as I go along trying to think what happened, it was like everything I ever hated or laughed at someone's karma or judged, I became. And maybe in order to make me a better person, a kinder person in the world, so that I can make a difference, even if it's for my own children. So
Must have taken, when I heard that you had done all that, including working for us, with us, and for you to come back to the program crying uncle, I mean, that takes a lot of guts.
yeah.
And
I was super embarrassed and I was super ashamed and to face my colleagues. And it's funny being in the house now, there's a couple handfuls of staff and my peers that have been my clients before. And,
Really?
Oh yeah. And have been clients in the CATS program or during internships that I did. And so I think maybe it's to show that like recovery is possible no matter what, as long as there's no cure for our disease, but things like treatment is the medicine. And as long as you take your medicine,
yeah.
you will stay well. Otherwise, chances are you might get sick again.
Did you ever have embarrassing conversations with people when you run into old clients or staff or anything? Do they say?
Yeah, I think it started going back in the streets and then sharing space with people that had been my clients that were in addiction and, living that lifestyle with them then.
Jeez.
And it's really amazing that bad things happen in the streets. Those are the people that looked out for me the most. And I think it's because I was able to show humanity and kindness to them when they were in a situation where they were vulnerable. Working in CATS was to see people do that program in that environment was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my whole life. And so it really opened up the confidence to continue to make a difference for people and see the beauty. I feel like if it wasn't for the things that we've been through, we wouldn't be the beautiful humans that we are today. So,
Was there one thing, an incident or anything that caused your relapse? Or
so I had been with my husband, and this is one of the things, kind of cleaning up my program, so to speak. So one of the reasons that I got fired from CATS is because I started a relationship with one of the clients who's currently my husband. We're actually going through a divorce, but he was in prison for 5 years in the first 5 years of our relationship. And that was his drug of choice, was opioids. So when he got out, it kind of started from there. And he's been in amphetamine psychosis since November of 2023 and now is back, incarcerated. But it's been really sad and hard to see such a beautiful person struggling so badly and not being able to have them in a way that I once did. But I remember telling like Cheryl Shivers and, people that knew what had happened, like, it's really freeing to like get this off my conscience because I was still working in the field unethically, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I'll work in the field anymore. But if I do, it feels good to have like full integrity behind it, to say that out loud. So
Do you think that you're getting to the bottom of all of it, the relapse and all that?
absolutely. Yeah.
Because you have certifications, right?
Yeah. I'm a licensed substance use disorder counselor. And
So what's that like
that,
when you're listening to your therapist?
right.
How's that going?
When I went into going back into treatment, one of the things that I said was like, I have a tendency to kind of size other therapists up and kind of, I didn't want to run the show. I didn't want to self-diagnose. I didn't want to give too much feedback. I wanted to be like a snail and be slower to speak and listen more.
How's that going?
It's actually like the secrets that keep you sick. It really keeps you sick, And so to be able to say all those things out loud and to go through like the real life heartbreak of it there, but to have full honesty and integrity behind it, and that's not why I might not work in the social work field again. I think it was hard for me taking on everyone's trauma and not doing my own work. That was like, I guess maybe my excuse to not continue taking my medicine. And so, it's nice to be able to identify this has happened then and okay. Because like I said, for a moment I was sitting around like, what was all that for? What is my purpose now? What do I do?
Do you think that this time around, I don't know how long you've been in treatment this time.
Since April 4th.
It's not very long
At all.
But do you think now you're recognizing your relapse cycle of like where that's starting? Do you think that you're able to pinpoint it faster, or does it make it harder when you know all the things that your certifications teach you?
So I think taking like the whole intellectualization out of it, right? And recognizing that's actually like the thinking error, that kind of helps that relapse cycle keep going around and understanding it from, I know that I understand both sides of the desk, so to speak, so I can respect being on both sides. But yeah, it's easier for me to identify this is it, or to work on all the things that I didn't do before when I was in Odyssey House, all the trauma or, the codependency, all of those things that just kind of pile up, even in long-term recovery. So
How's the feedback from your fellow clients?
it's good. And feedback I take, I know immediately if I start feeling some kind of way about it, it's because I need to process that and I need to take a look at it. And I don't want to be in treatment being anybody's therapist, not even my own. I don't want to be the therapist. I want to stay being a client. I take a lot of time not rushing through the work that Odyssey provides for you to kind of help you come to your own like aha moments,
Just for you.
Yeah.
Boy, I'm thinking about all this, and it would be so weird with the amount of intellectual knowledge you have about substance use, and then you dealing with it yourself again.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa.
Yeah. It's like the only plan I made was going in was like, don't size up the therapist. Don't act like a therapist. So much so that I didn't plan on how am I going to be a client? How am I going to look around and realize I'm back in treatment?
I just don't know if being educated would help you identify those triggers or help you do the opposite of
Right.
excusing them away
Right.
because you understand.
Right. That's why, like I said, I take a lot of time I don't just do the required assignments, I do all the assignments. And I don't hurry and rush through them just so I can move to a level. I take my time so that not that Odyssey or any other institutions are bad, but so that I don't have to be in an institution again. They say that's one of the outcomes, or, that's what happens, death, institution, or incarceration. And so it's hard to go. It was hard. I tried to finagle my way out of going back into residential treatment. I'm with FRC court, which is like felony drug court for DCFS. I have a DCFS case. My son is in foster care. And so I'm fighting for a lot now. And I remember how good recovery was, you know. So I don't count the days. I just try to make them count, you know.
I love that.
Yeah. Learning really for me is like, how do I look at red flags and not accept them as red roses from friends, from intimate partners, from how do I get to a place where I take care of myself so that I can not take care of people that can take care of themselves. You know, my son can't take care of himself. He needs me to take care of him. And, you know, really just recognizing I really only have a few core beliefs, but they're pretty deep and the wall's pretty high. So
It's wild how as soon as you learn your core beliefs, you're like, oh my gosh, that plays into my daily life.
oh yeah. There's a lot of fear, and I've tried to be really fearless, and so to face fear has been scary.
I think it's amazing that you're doing it.
I'm amazed too.
Thank you.
You know, when I heard that, you really had to humble yourself to come back in,
Yeah.
you know, and know what you would face,
Yeah.
clients, staff.
Has it been as hard as you thought it would be, or has it been pretty welcoming? Or?
It's 100% been welcoming. It's just me transitioning from survival on the streets to coming back to being someone who doesn't have to do that. Recognizing that Odyssey is a safe place. Odyssey has always felt like home. It's a breath of fresh air to me. As soon as I walked in the doors, I never wanted to leave Odyssey in the first place. You know what I mean? Every time. And so some of my closest people that I love the most are here at Odyssey. And a lot of people say a lot of things about Odyssey House, and that's okay because Odyssey isn't for everybody, but I will be their number one cheerleader forever. So yeah, it's been really welcoming. All the things that I was afraid of, being judged or that I felt like I should have been ashamed of, has not been valid at all. And so it probably kept me in addiction a lot longer than I needed to this time. Opioid addiction definitely was not my favorite. You know.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
You like crack cocaine better? So number one on the drug hit list is, yeah.
Well, like I said before, I think caring now has been the number one difference. Not caring is easy to do because it can get to a place on the streets where that's a breath of fresh air and that is comfortable and home, you know, kind of living the life that I have. And I remember it equally as I do recovery. And so I'm really eager to get back to that person, but better, and like do the things that I didn't do before. Share rooms with people, acknowledge people as my peers, and not somebody that had been my client, you know. So
What was life like on the streets? Was it you said you sort of get into that after a while.
yeah, I mean, it's weird how humans, I think, but especially for me, you get comfortable in uncomfortable places, and it gets scary to leave no matter what. There's a lot of things this time I wasn't willing to do to survive that I did on the streets before, you know, the hustle or whatever. And so it left me in some really bad situations and alone, and that was preferable for me. But it's just really weird how it appeases that love you have for addiction. I'm always one of the first people to stand up and say, like, I equally love addiction as much as I love recovery. You know what I mean? But what I'm not willing to do is deal with the consequences that addiction brings. So
you have to remember the good days in recovery.
Absolutely.
When you think about using.
absolutely. The little mundane things that, you know, a shower and clean clothes and, you know, cooking and cleaning and
Safety.
safety. Yeah. fear is my number one thinking under. So,
Because we've talked to some people who say there's do you know Casey Erickson? He's one of our six. He was one of the first people who was rounded up in Operation Rio Grand, which happened like 6-7 years ago.
Yeah.
He's extremely successful now, and he talked about some kind of weird. He got the crap beat out of him, had bones broken in his face, and had to be reconstructed. But he said there was a certain allure to being on the street down on Rio Grande.
Absolutely, yeah. That's how it was before long-term recovery for me. And Operation Rio Grande, I actually remember them coming in. That's when I first was working in CATS. And we're going to move you guys to Davis County, they said, to run your program because we have to make room. And I remember this, my automatic thought was like, drive down there and be like, everyone run. They're going to raid you, But it's like everyone needs their brick wall or their bottom. And so, how can I interfere with that?
I was a news reporter at the time.
Yeah.
I was in on the planning, and I actually was doing a live shot because they had such a huge force of law enforcement going down Rio Grande, and they were stopping everybody and searching everybody for drugs and stuff like that, and then taking them over to a place that no longer exists. It was an old building by the police station, and keeping them all in a warehouse and saying, okay, do you want to go to treatment or you want to go to jail? So, and that's why we expanded our residential program to have a place we call Mill Creek.
Yep.
So,
yeah. I was 5 years in recovery at that point. My time on North Temple was a lot different than Operation Rio Grande. That was a once-in-a-lifetime thing that never happened before or after. So it was pretty sad. I heard it was one of the biggest open-air drug markets in the United States for a minute. So
we'd go down with a camera.
Oh, yeah.
And me wearing a suit. And because there were hundreds and hundreds of people on the street. And I'd say, anybody here have some cocaine or heroin that I can buy? And people would actually walk up knowing that a camera was rolling, and they'd have, an 8-ball of cocaine or something, and say it's $100. And I could make that transaction if I wanted to on video.
They were scared.
And they knew that the cops weren't going to do anything because they sort of they were there, but they didn't interfere because they figured it was in an enclosed area of Salt Lake. So I don't know. It was just a strange time.
They say it's addiction. It's an addiction of bad choices. Because it controls that part of your brain, and so things that are not logical seem like a good idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a disease of bad choices.
Or this is fun, hanging around, something like that.
Disease of bad choices. So understanding that it's incurable, I think, for me is important. And, keep taking my medicine. And I thank Odyssey for being part of my medicine.
Well, I agree with you saying that I will be a recovering alcoholic for the rest of my life.
Absolutely.
And that's hard to accept, I guess, saying. But at least there's not simple, but there's a cure, or not a cure, but there's a way to treat it.
Medicine, yeah. Before there wasn't, and I don't think that addicts or recovering addicts are bad people, and I think that's the sad part is that society or consequences make us feel like we might not want to say that out loud for the rest of our lives, but
we are out of time. I thank you for coming and sharing your story, and congratulations on eating humble pie and coming back again to do it again.
Yes. Hopefully it shows that recovery is possible no matter what. So.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
It's really nice to have you on. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Nicole, good to see you again.
You too.
Thank you for watching and listening to another edition of Odyssey House Journals.